The native who listens to the wind, who dances with the sun, the moon, drinks from clear waters, moves in silence among the deep presence of trees and animals, who honors the sacred land and his embodied ancestors, bows to beauty, lives from pure humanity. Welcome to the latest Floating Poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 128 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the deep-seasoned coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically, and yes, more wisely. In broadcast 127, we mused on truth seeking to truth-telling, reality, factuality versus beliefs, trueness to self and others, the value, vitalness of transparency and integrity in and across society, from our communities to our countries, the power and beauty of living honestly. This week on wisdom, seeking, gaining, using, and refining it, drawing from the wisdom of nature, of true elders still with us, of ancient philosophers, thinkers, writers, and others, of times past and present. Arrive at practical to emotional to spiritual wisdom through our own seminal life experiences, where our greater knowing, understanding arises and grows. See a clear and compelling need for wiser heads and hearts in these anxious and bewildering times for so many across our world. I've come up with some thoughtful cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry for us. Today, chosen from a larger wealth of material that I had to winnow down. There was so much that maybe later on in time we'll do a part 2. But enough now to spelunk through together. That may, I hope, lead to some welcome insights and other enlightenings, other enlivenings. May it be so. Well, let's see what happens. The Priest, for Papa Lefteris. It's about a benevolent, beneficent Greek priest that I met years back on an island in the Aegean at the monastery of Panagia Castriani on Kea in the Cyclades in the summer of 2013, whose name, by the way, in English means freedom. So he's actually Father Freedom. How about that? The priest. He lives in a blue and white world, in summer and winter stillness, in the refuge of a mountaintop monastery, among pilgrims, icons, saints, seabirds, in the music of his sambuna, a benevolent being from his life-wise eyes to his blossomed heart, under his black kamalaukian, ashen beard, long robe, and sandaled feet. The Priest. My Wisdom by Naomi Shihab Nye. When people have a lot, they want more. When people have nothing, they will happily share it. Some people say never getting your way builds character. By now, our character must be deep and wide as a continent. Africa, Australia, giant cascade of stars spilling over our huge night. Where did the power go? Did it enjoy its break? Is power exhausted? What is real power? Who really has power? Did the generator break? Do we imagine silence more powerful because it might contain everything? Quiet always lives inside noise. But does it get much done? Silence waits for truth to break it. Calendars can weep too. They want us to have better days. Welcome to every minute. Feel lucky you're still in it. No bird builds a wall. Sky purse jingling change. Won't give up our hopes for anything. Not your fault you didn't make the world. How dare this go on and on, cried the person who believed in praying. God willing, God willing, God willing. There were others who prayed to ruins and stumps. Open palms hold more. Refuse to give mistakes too much power. Annoying person who told me to stay home and do what other girls do. If you disappeared, I still might miss you. Babies want to help us. They laugh for no reason. Pay close attention to a drop of water on the kitchen table. You cannot say one word about religion and exclude Ahmad. My Wisdom by Naomi Shihab Nye. Thank you. From the Tiny Journalist collection called. From the Lumbee Native American tribe. Seek wisdom, not knowledge. Knowledge is of the past. Wisdom is of the future. Open your eye, your third eye, the inner all-seeing one, where higher consciousness resides, can preside. That closed, even halfway, can shine no deeper vision or greater wisdom, but wide open, can tune to the higher vibrations of the universe, can gaze mystically inward and extrasensorially, extraordinarily, sensitively outward. Jack Gilbert's poem, I Imagine the Gods. I imagine the gods saying, we will make it up to you. We will give you 3 wishes, they say. Let me see the squirrels again, I tell them. Let me eat some of the great hog stuffed and roasted on its giant spit and put out steaming into the winter of my neighborhood when I was usually too broke to afford even the 100 grams I ate so happily walking up the cobbles, past the street of the moon and the street of the birdcage makers, the street of silence and the street of the little pissing. We can give you wisdom, they say in their rich voices. Let me go at last to Huguette, I say, the Algerian student with her huge eyes who timidly invited me to her room when I was too young and bewildered that first year in Paris. Let me at least fail at my life. Think, they say patiently, we could make you famous again. Let me fall in love one last time, I beg them. Teach me mortality, frighten me into the present. Help me to find the heft of these days, that the nights will be full enough and my heart feral. Thank you, Jack Gilbert. That's from his collection, The Great Fires. So wisdom. Well, Wikipedia has this to say. Wisdom, sapience, or sagacity, is the ability to contemplate and act using knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. It's associated with attributes such as unbiased judgment, compassion, experiential self-knowledge, self-transcendence, and non-attachment, and virtues such as ethics and benevolence. To Socrates and Plato, philosophy was literally the love of wisdom, philosophia. And on sapience, which is also from the Greek, it's defined as transcendent wisdom, ultimate reality or the ultimate truth of things. A sapiential perspective of wisdom is said to lie in the heart of every religion, where it is often acquired through intuitive knowing. This type of wisdom is described as going beyond mere practical wisdom and includes self-knowledge, interconnectedness, conditioned origination of mind states, and other deeper understandings of subjective experience. It can also lead to the ability of an individual to act with appropriate judgment, a broad understanding of situations, and greater appreciation toward other living beings. And from the Marginalian, I wanted to mention a book. You may know about it. It's The Daily Stoic, 366 Meditations on Wisdom, Perseverance, and the Art of Living by Ryan Holiday, who collected those, and Stephen Hanselman. So it's a very inspiring set of meditations, thoughts, and Maria Popova in The Marginalian says, Over the millennia, Stoicism has continued to influence minds as varied as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Martha Nussbaum, and Tim Ferriss. Today, the Stoics' wisdom is as valid and empowering as ever. Aurelius' advice on how to begin each day is a potent recipe for sanity in the modern world. Seneca's meditation on how to stretch life's shortness by living wide rather than long remains the greatest consolation for the fact of our finitude. And his advice on the mightiest antidote to fear continues to fortify the spirit. Well, it's worth reading. So, the Daily Stoic. So I wanted to talk to you about the seventh generation principle from the Native Americans, the First Peoples. This is from mollylarkin.com. What is the seventh generation principle? Since some of you may know it, some may not. She says, I'm always surprised that more people don't know the origin of the term. It's a principle taught by Native Americans saying that in every decision, be it personal, governmental, or corporate, we must consider how it will affect our descendants 7 generations into the future, so that the pristine sky, field, and mountains in this photo, there's a beautiful photo here, will still be here for them to enjoy. Western society generally considers a generation to be 25 years. The Lakota Nation, for example, considers one generation to be 100 years. Well, this principle was and is so important to Native American cultures that it was codified in the Iroquois Great Law of Peace. And she says, to her knowledge, all Native American and indigenous tribes throughout the world embraced this teaching in its kind. Long before environmentalists got us thinking about carbon footprints and sustainability, indigenous peoples lived in balance with the world around them. It even defined their language, and all their terms meant we are all related to and respect everything in life. The tribes didn't even have a word for, quote, ecology. Respect for the earth was so ingrained in their lifestyle that one word would be too limiting. Well, the earliest recording of this principle, the 7th generation, dates back to that great law of peace of the Iroquois, created in the 12th century, way before America began. And when our founding fathers looked for examples of effective government and human liberty upon which to model a constitution to unite the colonies, they found it in the government of the Iroquois nation, which at that point had stood for hundreds of years. Ironically, in drafting our constitution, our founders left out one of the essential principles of the great law of peace, which was the 7th generation principle. Ironic because it is the heart of this very model of government that has stood for these 1,000 years. Very interesting. I thought, friends, how do you feel about this? Are you inclined to reorient yourself this way, knowing about this, or contemplating this? Or see how it goes. I thought this was interesting, too, for us. What is wisdom? It's from psychologytoday.com on the psychology and philosophy of wisdom, and just a few pieces, a few snippets. This is from 2019. The author, Hagen, says, every time I utter the word wisdom, someone giggles or sneers. Wisdom, more so even than expertise, does not sit comfortably in a democratic, anti-elitist society in an age dominated by science and technology, by specialization and compartmentalization. It's too loose, too grand, and too mysterious a concept. With our heads in our smartphones and tablets and our bills and bank statements, we simply do not have the time or mental space for it. As I argue in my new book, Hypersanity, Thinking Beyond Thinking, wisdom is not so much a kind of knowledge as a way of seeing or ways of seeing. When we take a few steps back, like when we stand under the shower or go on holiday, we begin to see the bigger picture. In everyday language, wisdom has two opposites, foolishness and folly, which involve respectively lack and loss of perspective. But if you have a proper perspective, you cannot fail to understand the goals and values of life, or indeed fail to act on that understanding. And courage, said Aristotle, is the first of the human qualities because it is the one which guarantees all the others, including wisdom. So, that brings us a moment for questions for you, for everyone leaning in, about wisdom. How much do you think or hear about it yourself? if very little, why is that for you? Why not more? How wise do you believe you are? And based on what? What significant wisdom have you gained or gleaned in your life so far? Where did it come from? Is there anything you're actively seeking wisdom about, deep insight into? Who's the wisest person you know personally, or have met in your travels, or maybe the wisest animal? What made you think of them as wise-headed or hearted? Was it a feeling, an intuitive sense? What did doing something greatly foolhardy, greatly unwise, teach you? How often are you guided by your deeper knowing, your innate wisdom? If often or strongly, how and when did you learn to trust it? What about the wisdom of your body? What has it been telling you, or has it told you, informed or guided you, especially through an illness or some crisis, some bodily crisis? What wisdom of your own have you shared with someone else, given to someone else or others, that helped them shape their understanding of themselves or life or the world? Where are the greatly wise men and women we need today to shepherd us highly consciously and conscientiously through our epic challenges, our social, environmental, economic, spiritual, and other critical challenges, including true statesmen, not politicians, those who work to preserve the natural well-being of their country's people? And what would a truly wise world look like compared to now? A truly enlightened society, educational system, national or local government, what would it look like? Questions for us, for you. Wanted to strike a note on practical wisdom. And there's a book by that very title by the celebrated psychologist Barry Schwartz and political scientist Kenneth Sharp. Practical Wisdom, the Right Way to Do the Right Thing. It's on really nurturing and reclaiming the essential moral skill at the heart of character traits like courage, compassion, loyalty, fairness, generosity, and empathy. So I'll just give you a slice from here. People who are practically wise understand the purpose of being a friend or a parent or a doctor and are motivated to pursue this aim. A wise practitioner wants to do the right thing not because of some monetary reward or punishment, but because it is what being a good teacher or a good doctor demands. But aiming at the right thing is not sufficient. That's why we say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Translating our aims into action demands expertise. We need to appreciate that cultivating wisdom is not only good for society, but is, as Aristotle thought, a key to our own happiness. It isn't just something we, quote, ought to have. It's something we want to have to flourish. It demands more than the skill to be perceptive about others. It demands the capacity to perceive oneself, to assess what our own motives are, to admit our failures, to figure out what has worked or not and why. And they go on to talk about some of the core qualities, and I'll just mention a few. A wise person knows the proper aims of the activity they're engaged in. They know how to improvise. They're perceptive. They know how to take on the perspective of another. They know how to make emotion an ally of reason. And they're an experienced person because it's a craft, and craftsmen are trained by having the right experience. So you might want to pick that book up sometime or look it up online. I came across a book called Advice from My 80-Year-Old Self by artist and curator Susan O'Malley, unfortunately no longer alive. She died soon after this book was published, just a week before a lot of things were unfolding around that book. But she asked 100 ordinary people between the ages of 7 and 88 what advice their 80-year-old selves would give to their present-day selves. How about that for an invitation? Well, interesting book, but we could do that ourselves. I'd be curious to know what happens if you do it. You can let me know. Well, in this book, she writes, it's easy to forget how wise we can be. We resist our internal wisdom due to any number of reasons, such as fear, fatigue, or inconvenience. We race through our hyperactive lives, so busy with the details of day-to-day living, we end up feeling disconnected from ourselves and each other. But what's great about the 80-year-old self is that no matter how frantic we get, they're always readily available to us, present within each of us, reminding us we can be the best version of ourselves, not through some colossal effort at personal reinvention, but simply by slowing down, taking a moment to pay attention, and listening. So she talks about her experience around that and shares with the thoughts of all those different people. There was something actually from the Daily Stoic, which I get online, just a thought for the day from Ryan Holiday, not from that book necessarily. And I thought I liked how it opened, which was no one is more invested in getting better than you. You read books, you have a mentor, you even have a business coach. You go to work conferences, you go to the gym, you have hobbies that you watch videos about, that you have goals for, you have a financial advisor, you put in long hours. It's all very impressive. But is it really? Marcus Aurelius was all for optimization and improvement. He too had the best experts in his corner, worked long hours, wanted to be sure his effort was pointed at the right goal. But he said, did it really matter? No. What mattered, he said, was becoming, quote, a better citizen, a better person, a better resource in tight places, a better forgiver of faults. How about that for wisdom? Marina Tsvetaeva, Russian, translated by Ilya Kaminsky and Jean Valentine, has a poem, I am happy living simply. She wrote this in 1919. I'm happy living simply, like a clock or a calendar. Worldly pilgrim, thin, wise as any creature. To know the spirit is my beloved. To come to things, swift as a ray of light or a look. To live as I write, spare, the way God asks me, and friends do not. Thank you, Marina Tsvetaeva. Well, so much, as some of you know, of my focus is on opening and deepening and enlivening and engaging and inspiring that not only in myself, but especially and also in others. That's my life's work now. And around that is this, among other pieces. When you feel everything, nothing is ever the same again. The very molecules inside and around you alter forever. When you feel selectively, or not at all, little changes. Maybe a bit of scenery. I know because I've lived both ways. Feeling immensely and freely now. Feeling narrowly and tightly then, when less wise in the ways of life and myself. To feel all is not for the faint of heart, but for those ready and willing to engage. Such a full orchestra of feeling is both welcome and liberating, worth hearing, worth experiencing. Without allowing all the chords, all the notes and passages, how can the symphony of everything within you really play, greatly resound? Aristotle said knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. How timelessly true. And how well do you know yourself? Do you want to know yourself? The poet Rumi. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. This connected me to a piece on LinkedIn on the common habits of the wisest people. Every prophet, monk, and savant had the habit of what is known in Arabic as kholwa. It is the daily hour of insulation from the world and talking to oneself. Well, some of them talk to God, but that's not our focus for today. Some even do kholwa for days at a time. Modern-day philosopher and one of the most influential media figures in the Arab world, Ahmad al-Shugari, wrote a book in 2019 titled 40 in reference to his 40 days of kholwa on an island in the Pacific Ocean with no technology. He used that time to read and self-reflect on his life journey, all for the hope of getting out wiser. And he did. Well, that led me to summon back up a poem that I wrote 6 years ago. I went through at that time a second round of seismic changes in my life, and I needed to go within to find sanctuary, a sanctuary to do that and revisit myself, my life, my beliefs, paradigms, and best next direction. And during that time, this poem, A Monastery of One, self-cloistered, apart, like all monks originally, in this case by chance, also some choice, with a place reserved for poetry, my own form of oratory. Curiously, in this green dwelling, close to the real thing, a neighboring convent of unseen nuns and a warrior monk brother with an ancient Okinawan moniker. An airy cloister of contemplation, a welcome hermitage, with a wealth of one self, one soul, if slighter right now in worldly goods, which I'd never trade away for a kingdom of almighty dollars, even if granted the wish. Though sharing this sacred body and spirit as sacredly, sensually, sourcefully with another as I did for a kind of lifetime before entering this sanctuary, would be a great joy. I know the day will come, before many seasons turn, when I return to the wider, weatherful world, I believe with more wisdom, more humility, more wonder. And my friends, since then I have. Glad to tell you that. This is an excerpt from La Poesia by Pablo Neruda that translates as poetry, and this piece of it was translated by the poet David White. And something ignited in my soul, fever or unremembered wings, and I went my own way, deciphering that burning fire, and I wrote the first bare line, bare, without substance, pure. Let's talk about elders more. And we had some words from some of them, the natives and others. David Wagner's poem, The Elders. When by the fire at sundown the elders no longer spoke, no longer shook their heads or reached for the food put down beside them, when their eyes stayed closed or open without blinking, when they no longer saw or heard what they were asked to understand, their children would cover them and let them lie close to the embers and would turn them over carefully and gently in the night, as they would have turned themselves if they had been sleeping, and would let them rest there through the day to be covered with leaves and rain, to be dried by the sun, like clothing newly washed in a spring, and then would bring them to the fire again at evening, to their accustomed places, as the warmth and light of the flames healed them, as the smoke healed them and the ashes smoothed across their faces, across their arms and legs and over their whole bodies, healed them slowly night after night and morning and afternoon, till the bundles of their skin grew light around their bones, still lighter each time they were lifted, and carried through the forest to a new campfire, till even the youngest could lift them, like those just born. Their eyes would be changed to cowrie shells, to slits in a whiteness, able to see more clearly into the sky, even at night and far below the earth, as far upstream as the source and as far downstream as the dark mouth of the Sipik River, till their spirits became large birds flying away, not into trees or into the clouds, but straight against the shoulder blades of their children, where they would hold as tight against their spines as if they had grown there, down curved beaks, firm along the tops of the living skulls of those grown children, where they would wait and whisper whatever children need to know. Thank you, David Wagner, for that. The Elders. We hear the words of a great elder, Sitting Bull, Chief Sitting Bull of the Lakota Sioux natives, South Dakota. He lived from 1831 to 1890. We return thanks to our mother, the earth, which sustains us. We return thanks to the rivers and streams which supply us with water. We return thanks to all herbs which furnish medicines for the cure of our diseases. We return thanks to the moon and stars which have given us their light when the sun was gone. We return thanks to the sun that has looked upon the earth with a beneficent eye. Lastly, we return thanks to the Great Spirit in whom is embodied all goodness and who directs all things for the good of her children. Thank you, Sitting Bull. Let's consider, too, the true masters of various arts today and through history, embodiers of certain deep wisdoms, and what they represent, radiate. This is called the heart of the master. Is the heart of the world. It beats for all humanity, for all possibility, for all earthly and ascended masters, ascending apprentices. Its chambers hold the wonders of a life evolvingly and exuberantly lived. Its vessels flow with wisdom and vitality, like wild and ancient rivers, through the landscape of the body. To all deep listeners, its valves sound forth strongly, like ocean waves rolling ashore, distinctly like the calls of an owl, filling the silence of the woods. A heart the master lives from, humbly, ever grateful for the gifts of his mastery. Speaking of masters, I consider my honorable older brother, Christopher, to be one of such masters. And his face graces the cover for this broadcast. He is also a literal grand master of the martial arts of karate and a Buddhist warrior monk, referenced in that poem, A Monastery of One, Hayashi Tomio. I have learned much about life and the world from him, and been inspired as a result to seek all kinds of other wisdom over the decades. So, honoring to him. I'm also fortunate to know, as you yourself may have a handful of true elders, 5 of them actually, all up in the upper reaches in their 80s, 90s, who have been rare friends my entire life, adult life, and incredible mentors. This was an honoring of 2021 of one of them. It's called A Friend for All Seasons, for Richard Russack on his 83rd birthday. For all seasons of the year, of life, of my own life, among others, who knows the root and art of being a true friend, as a man, father, partner, mentor, being a wise holder and witnesser of another's deeper nature, a faithful nurturer, encourager of one's dreams, desires, and greater possibilities, being a generous sharer, celebrator of the streams of adventures and raptures that come his and friends' way across time, whatever the outer world's changing weather. A wholly affirming, dearly enduring friend anyone of awareness would wish, welcome, treasure by their side. I hope there are such people in your life. I have another someone to raise a glass and a toast in this poem to. This is called Poetorialist for Irvi. Sulit Wu, a master herbalist and acupuncturist, and dear spirit and friend, soul sister, traveler, toucher, understander of life's meridians, pointer and painter of life's chi-flowing paths, its deep healing ways, learned with care from wise teachers, infused with seasons of distinctly dotted experience, daily honed with clear intent, true sentience, offering all those in her sphere the gift of her gifts and radiant spirit. Kurt Vonnegut. This is a poem he wrote in the New Yorker in May of 2005 for his friend Joe Heller, the writer. Here's the poem, Joe Heller. True story, word of honor. Joseph Heller, an important and funny writer, now dead. And he and I were at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island. I said, Joe, how does it make you feel to know that our host only yesterday may have made more money than your novel, Catch-22, has earned in its entire history? And Joe said, I've got something he can never have. And I said, what on earth could that be, Joe? And Joe said, the knowledge that I've got enough. Not bad. Rest in peace. Thank you for that, Kurt Vonnegut. I reflected in researching and sourcing material for this show on the many wisdoms of nature, from animals to trees, wild animals to domestic animals. And here are some findings around that to share. The Wait by Linda Gregg. 2 horses were put together in the same paddock, night and day, in the night and in the day, wet from heat and the chill of the wind on it, muzzle to water, snorting, head swinging, and the taste of bay in the shadowed air. The dignity of being. They slept that way, knowing each other always. Withers quivering for a moment, fetlock and the proud rise at the base of the tail, width of back. The volume of them, and each other's weight. Fences were nothing compared to that. People were nothing. They slept standing, their throats curved against the other's rump. They breathed against each other, whinnied and stomped. There are things they did that I do not know. The privacy of them had a river in it, had our universe in it, and the way its border looks back at us with its light. This was finally their freedom, the freedom an oak tree knows, that is built at night by stars. Wait by Linda Gregg. Thank you for that. Walt Whitman found quiet wisdom in trees, among other things. And he said in the book Specimen Days, one lesson from affiliating a tree, perhaps the greatest moral lesson anyhow from earth, rocks, animals, is that same lessons of inherency of what is, without the least regard to what the looker-on, the critic, supposes or says, or whether he likes or dislikes. Grace Bear Hollowell, as the poem Wisdom. I do not know what wisdom is, but if I knew, it might be a blue shadow where some dumb thing that never weeps creeps away to die. I do not know what wisdom is, but if I knew, it might be a blue shadow. Wisdom might be trees. Thank you, Grace Bear Hollowell. I've spoken of Olivia Laing, British writer, on her book To the River and other themes, but she decided, in the same river that Virginia Woolf drowned in, actually the Ouse River, she set out to walk its banks from source to sea while navigating her own upheaval of the soul in the wake of a great heartbreak. And she wrote To the River, A Journey Beneath the Surface. It's an absolutely beautiful book, lyrical book, and I just wanted to give you this one line from it. It's a mercy that time runs in one direction only, that we see the past but darkly and the future not at all. But we all have an inkling of what lies ahead, for against the ruins of the ages it is apparent that our time is nothing more than the passing of a shadow, and that our lives run like sparks through the stubble. Thank you, Olivia Laing. Mark Van Doren, slowly, slowly wisdom gathers. Slowly, slowly, wisdom gathers, golden dust in the afternoon, somewhere between the sun and me, sometimes so near that I can see, yet never settling, late or soon. Would that it did, and a rug of gold spread west of me a mile or more, not large, but so that I might lie face up between the earth and sky and know what none has known before. Then I would tell as best I could the secrets of that shining place, the web of the world, how thick, how thin, how firm, with all things folded in, how ancient, and how full of grace. Truly, thank you, Mark Van Doren. Naomi Shihab Nye, again, elementary. At the 100-year-old National Elk Refuge near Jackson Hole, we might ask, how long does an elk live? Who's an old elk here? We'd like to spend time with an elder elk, please. Tell us how to balance our lives on this hard edge of human mean temperatures, what we do and don't want to mean. Closing the door to the news will only make you stupid, snapped my friend who wanted everyone to know as much as she did. I'm hiding in old school books with information we never used yet. Before I drove, before I flew, before the principal went to jail, sinking my eyes into tall wooden window sashes, dreaming of light arriving from far reaches, our teacher as shepherds, school a vessel of golden hope. You could lift your daily lesson in front of your eyes, stare hard and think, this will take me somewhere. Oh, histories of India, geological formations of Australia, ancient poetries of China, Japan. Someday we will be aligned in a place of wisdom, together. Red deer, wapiti, running elk, rising above yellow meadows at sundown. An elk bows her head. In the company of other elk she feels at home. And we are lost on the horizon now, clumsy humanity, deeper into the next century than we can even believe, and they will not speak to us. Thank you, Naomi Shihab-Nye. Well, on bringing wisdom, I would say more than ever. We've always needed it more, but as an industrialized world, to caring for our environment. And William Vogt wrote a book back in time. He lived from 1902 to 1968, a masterwork, I would say, of actionable vision. And it helped shape some of the ethos of the modern environmental movement and emboldened many pioneers at that time. He said, if we ourselves do not govern our destiny firmly and courageously, no one is going to do it for us. On the chapter, there's a chapter in there called History of Our Future. He wrote, when I write, quote, we, I do not mean the other fellow. I mean every person who reads a newspaper printed on pulp from vanishing forests. I mean every man and woman who eats a meal drawn from steadily shrinking lands. Everyone who flushes a toilet and thereby pollutes a river, wastes fertile organic matter, and helps to lower a water table. Everyone who puts on a wool garment derived from overgrazed ranges that have been cut by the little hoofs and gullied by the rains, sending runoff and topsoil into the rivers downstream, flooding cities hundreds of miles away. We must, all of us, men, women, and children, reorient ourselves with relation to the world in which we live. We must come to understand our past, our history, in terms of the soil and water and forests and grasses that have made it what it is. We must see the years to come in the frame that makes space and time one. That task, he mentions, it will frequently require arduous and uncomfortable measures. It will cost considerable sums of money. Democratic governments are not likely to set forth on such a steep and rocky path unless people lead the way, so that the people shall not delude themselves, fight their way into blind alleys. It's imperative that this worldwide dilemma be made known to all mankind. Actually, that takes me back to our program on truth last week. The human race is caught in a situation as concrete as a pair of shoes, 2 sizes too small. We must understand that and stop blaming economic systems, the weather, bad luck, or callous saints. This is the beginning of wisdom and the first step on the long road back. Thank you, William Vogt. Road to Survival. I consider that an important read and a stirring up of yourself. Do you know Jane Goodall and her book, perhaps Hope, where she speaks about the meaning of wisdom there on the deepest wellspring of hope? And she said a great deal of our onslaught on Mother Nature is not really lack of intelligence, but a lack of compassion. True wisdom requires both thinking with our head and understanding with our heart. Certainly agree with her. 100%. Linda Hogan, Trail of Tears, our removal. With lines unseen, the land was broken. When surveyors came, we knew what the prophet had said was true. This land with unseen lines would be taken. So, you who live there now, don't forget to love it. Thank it, the place that was once our forest, our ponds, our mosses, the swamplands with birds and more lowly creatures. As for us, we walked into the military strength of hunger and war for that land we still dream. As the ferry crossed the distance, or as the walkers left behind their loved ones, Think how we took with us our cats and kittens, the puppies we loved. We were innocent of what we faced along the trail. We took clothing, dishes, thinking there would be something to start a new life, believing justice lived in the world and the horses, so many, one by one stolen, taken by many thieves. So have compassion for that land at least. Every step we took was one away from the songs, old dances, memories. Some of us dark and not speaking English, some of us white or married to the dark, or children of translators, the half-white, all of us watched by America, all of us longing for trees, for shade, homing, rooting, even more for food along the hunger way. You would think those of us born later would fight for justice, for peace, for the new land, its trees being taken. You would think the struggle would be over between the two worlds in this place that is now our knowledge, our new belonging, our being, and we never again care for the notion of maps or American wars or the God of their sky. Thinking of those things we were forced to leave behind, living country stolen home, the world measured inch by inch, mile by mile. Hectares, all measurements, even the trail of our tears. With all the new fierce light, heat, drought, the missing water, you'd think in another red century the old wisdom might exist if we considered enough that even before the new beliefs we were once whole, but now our bodies and minds remained the measured geography. Thank you, Linda Hogan, for that. I'm going to save this for later, but I'm going to point you to it. It's a poem by Linda Pastan, P-A-S-T-A-N. It's called On the Steps of the Jefferson Memorial. It's from her collection Prairie Schooner. But I will read you Prayers for the Protection and Opening of the Heart by Yaakov Hakohen, H-A-K-O-H-E-N. This is the translator's note. The poems attributed to him are taken from a longer prayer that Shalem describes as a mysterious hymn. It employs symbolism characteristic of the Kabbalah of its day, including mention of the kelepot, shard shells or husks that embody the forces of evil in the world. So here's the prayers that Peter Cole translated. May the name send its hidden radiance to open the gates of deliverance to his servants and shine in their hearts, which now are shut in silent darkness. May the great King be moved to act in perfection and righteousness, to open the gates of wisdom for us and waken the love of old, the love of ancient days. By the power of the hidden I am that I am, and by the dew of desire and blessing, the dead will live again. I am is the power of your name in concealment, and one who knows its mystery dwells in eternity's instant. Over the world it pours forth abundance and favor, and on it all worlds hang like grapes in a cluster. Send the dew of blessing, the dew of grace. Renew my dispensation and grant me length of days. Bring light to my eyes with your teaching, and let not the husks that surround your hosts obstruct me. May heaven and Adam's children judge me with mercy. Sustain me with their strength and fortune, but do not leave me in need of the gifts of men. Thank you for those prayers, Yaakov Hakohen. I also wanted to share something from an interview recently with in Emergence magazine called The Ecology of Perception by interview with David Abram. But I'll just read you the overview line, and maybe you'll dip into it. It's a longer piece. In this interview, the cultural ecologist and philosopher David Abram discusses the animism, power, and potency of the living world. In our current moment of ecological and societal instability, he calls on us to remember our inherent participation in the collective embodied flesh of the earth. Okay, now coming toward the last of our sharings for now and ponderings for now for this time. Simon Ortiz, Culture and the Universe. 2 nights ago in the canyon darkness, only the half moon and stars, only mere men. Prayer, faith, love, existence. We are measured by vastness beyond ourselves. Dark is light, stone is rising. I don't know if humankind understands culture. The act of being human is not easy knowledge. With painted wooden sticks and feathers, we journey into the canyon toward stone, a massive presence in midwinter. We stop. Lean into me. The universe sings in quiet meditation. We are wordless. I am in you. Without knowing why culture needs our knowledge, we are one self in the canyon. And the stone wall I lean upon spins me wordless and silent to the reach of stars and to the heavens within. It's not humankind, after all, nor is it culture that limits us. It is the vastness we do not enter. It is the stars we do not let own us. Thank you, Simon Ortiz. Culture in the Universe, from his collection Out There Somewhere. Adam Zagajewski's poem, Don't Allow the Lucid Moment to Dissolve, translated by Renata Gorzinski. Don't allow the lucid moment to dissolve. Let the radiant thought last in stillness, though the page is almost filled and the flame flickers. We haven't risen yet to the level of ourselves. Knowledge grows slowly like a wisdom tooth. The stature of a man is still notched high up on a white door. From far off, the joyful voice of a trumpet and of a song rolled up like a cat. What passes doesn't fall into a void. A stoker is still feeding coal into the fire. Don't allow the lucid moment to dissolve. On a hard, dry substance, you have to engrave the truth. Thank you, Adam Zagajewski. The poet and master pawner M.C. Richards. As our personal universes expand, if we keep drawing ourselves into center again and again, everything seems to enhance everything else. The activity seems to spring out of the same source: poem or pot, loaf of bread, letter to a friend, a morning's meditation, a walk in the woods, turning the compost pile, knitting a pair of shoes, weeping with pain, fainting with discouragement, burning with shame, trembling with indecision. Wisdom is a state of the total being, in which capacities for knowledge and for love, for survival and for death, for imagination, inspiration, intuition, for all the fabulous functioning of this human being who we are, come into a center with their forces, come into an experience of meaning that can voice itself as wise action. Thank you, M.C. Richards. Walt Whitman once more from Leaves of Grass here. Now I see the secret of the making of the best persons. It is to grow in the open air and to eat and sleep with the earth. Here a great personal deed has room. Its effusion of strength and will overwhelms law and mocks all authority and all arguments against it. Here is the test of wisdom. Wisdom is not finally tested in schools. It cannot be passed from one having it to another not having it. Wisdom is of the soul. It is not susceptible of proof, is its own proof. Applies to all stages and objects and qualities, and is content, is the certainty of the reality and immortality of things and the excellence of things. Something there is in the float of the sight of things that provokes it out of the soul. Now I re-examine philosophies and religions. They may prove well in lecture rooms, yet not prove at all under the spacious clouds and along the landscape and flowing currents. Here is realization. Here is a man tallied. He realizes here what he has in him: the past, the future, majesty, love. If they are vacant of you, you are vacant of them. Thank you, Walt Whitman. Well, remember, dear listeners, what we have inside us, not just outside us. A whole universe, so vast, marvelous, mysterious. The one we live in, the one we read about, talk, write, and muse about. But why bypass the one as profound, as boundless, that lives not out there, but in here, inside each of us? We miraculous mirrors, microcosms, embodiers of that universe. Its wisdom, energy, and wonder, awaiting our discovery, unveiling, expressing, in our own way, space, and time, the whole universe of you. Chief Seattle of the Squamish and Duwamish tribes, Washington State. This we know, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites one family. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the children of the earth. We do not weave the web of life, we are only a strand of it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. And last for now, above the tree line. Down in the forest of pinon or banderosa, spruce or juniper, you can't see the terrain above, what you'll encounter from the weather to the boulders, until you hike up through the tree line, past the last twisted wood. You can really only engage from here away up, and only as you go. Apply your wisdom or intuition of the moment to your next movement up your mountain, to the ease or challenge of your next chosen momentum in the now opened out air of your ascent. Thank you again for leaning in, listening, and feeling in, for sharing these broadcasts with friends and others, for commenting. I love hearing from some of you as you do write about various programs, including the last two. And I had this beautiful note from Anthony in Nashville, Tennessee, who said, "Wednesday evening with you and your broadcasts are the highlights of my week." Beautiful. Well, I would like to say that I also appreciate some of you sending welcome gifts of thanks for a given program or as a sign of support for all my ongoing work creating and presenting them. So if you do have a suggestion or question, send along a note, colin@thepoetorialist.com. To make a contribution of any kind, you can send it by Venmo to Fivefold, FIVEFOLD, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal, or by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891, or through my site, thepoetorialist.com, and the Donate tab. Patrons can also host or sponsor me as a working poet in residence in a given place in the world for a given time, in a given season, to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Just email me and we can explore and begin exploring the opportunity. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist. I do hope you'll lean in, and soon again. Until then, dear listeners, let's get wiser. Live ever more wisely. Connect daily with our deeper knowing. Actively cultivate a much greater understanding of self and life. Follow the pure wisdom of nature, especially its natural balance. Call on the learnings of our living elders, and act one by one as caring earth keepers for not just our and the next generation, but for the next 5, 6, 7, like the sage Native Americans have for over 1,000 years. And may wise minds and hearts appear and prevail to bring our greatly troubled world to a seriously safer, healthier, and more harmonious place. Yes. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.